Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the channel. So this is going to be a garage update, and then I'm going to be asking you guys for your opinion on something later on, so stay tuned. So we're going to start off with the Mousemobile 2.0. As it sits, this car has 70,700 miles, which means I've driven it over 30,000 miles since I bought it in January of 2018, and I've loved it. Now, at first, I thought I made a terrible decision because within the first month, I got pulled over for speeding, which, I mean, it was kind of my fault. The excuse I used was, well, I just got this car last month, which means, if you think about it, I haven't fully gotten used to it, which was kind of true. I was still getting used to how the car performs. You could have been going 15 over and not even realized it until you looked at your speedometer. So that sort of story. But ever since then, I've learned from my mistake, learned to use cruise control so I don't overly speed, because I used to have a bit of a heavy foot and now I don't. Drop that need for speed, save it for the track. Speaking of which, that's why I have these Max Performance summer tires from Michelin. These are Pilot Sport 4S's. Now, a little bit of a backstory on the tires this car has had fitted to it. It came to me with the Continental Conti Pro Contacts, which were the OEM tires. Now, the rears were bald, and I had no idea they were, but then again, I should have known because they were making an awful road noise on the first drive and even the first few drives. And it took 2 weeks since I purchased this car before I realized that, because what happened was on my way home from either running an errand or from getting dinner or whatever, I don't remember, it was over 2 years ago, I ran over a nail and it punctured my right rear tire. So I took it to the dealer the next day without putting the spare tire on because I had no idea there was a spare tire to begin with. And they told me that they would patch it, but the tires in the back are bald and need to be replaced. So what ended up happening is they patched the tire. They did not replace the tires because we didn't want them to. It would have cost money. So what we did was we went through the Lyle dealer, which is where I got this car. I mean, the car was serviced at Valley Honda when it had the plug, but we took it back to Honda of Lyle the following month, which was March. And then what happened is they agreed to put 4 new tires on the car, but I didn't know what brand they were going to be. And I didn't have much knowledge about tires at the time. And let me tell you, those tires were single-handedly the worst tires you could have put on this car because they were the cheapest. They were from Milestar. They wore in 17,000 miles. So those tires were not made to withstand high performance, especially when you go out onto the track. Now, this car's never been tracked, but I plan to take it to the track in May of next year, which is why I have these summer tires. So then I ended up replacing those Milestars with Bridgestone Turanza Quiet Tracks. Then I replaced the Quiet Tracks prematurely after under a year with these Michelins as a trade-in, simply because I thought an 80,000 mile tread wear tire was a bit overkill, especially if I'm going to be getting rid of the car next year. So I figured, you know what, I might as well get something a little bit more fun. I already have a separate set of winter tires, so having summer tires is no problem if you have a separate set of winter tires, because that's why you get winter tires. The only thing is I would have to put those on sooner with summer tires versus all-season tires. But anyway, if you take a look here, these tires look so amazing mounted up on the 18-inch rims. Now, of course, some people might be thinking, well, why don't you just get new rims or whatever? Well, because I don't feel like spending that kind of money. And I think these 18-inch rims look fine. But anyway, the thing is, I've driven this car more miles in the same amount of time I've owned my previous car for. So let that sink in. I only drove my previous car about 17,000 miles before I got rid of it, and it had a check engine light on when I sold it. I could have waited for my scan tool to arrive to clear the code to see if it was like a hoax code, because what happened when we had to do our first major repair to that car is the check engine light came on for a BS reason. As in, there was a vapor leak from where the fuel tank was, and it would require the entire fuel tank to be replaced, so we had to do that. That was our most expensive repair we did to that car. And honestly, we probably should have gotten rid of the car then and there, and we shouldn't have even gotten the car. That's why I say, you know, I don't like that we've gotten that car, or if that makes sense. But it happened, it's done, it's over with. Never going to repeat that mistake again. Anyway, moving on. So, 13,000 more miles driven on this car than my previous car in the same length of time. That's most likely due to the fact that my previous car broke down more. It was in the shop. Also, for most of the length of ownership, I was in high school, so I was taking the bus. And when I did start taking my car to school, I didn't drive very far. Whereas when I got into college, that's when the miles started racking up. And so the car just decided it had had enough that winter season, 2017 to 18. But moving on to the Ford. So as the Ford sits, it has 9,543 miles. I might have talked my dad into getting winter tires for this car. So if that happens, all three of our cars are going to have winter tires. Now, currently it's on 20-inch rims with these Pirelli tires. If you guys know anything about me, you know I don't like these Pirellis. But surprisingly, when I drove this car in the winter last year, it was fine. Now, I was a little nervous because of, well, my experience with these tires on the bends. So I just took it slow, as you do, and everything was fine. But moving on, we're going to be getting 18-inch rims. If we do end up getting winter tires, there's no guarantee that my dad will get winter tires for this car, but if he does, he's either going to get the Continental Viking Contact 7s or the Nokian Hakkapeliitta R3s. So let me know in the comments, what do you guys want to see Dad get in terms of winter tires between those two, and why? Moving on to the Mercedes, this car has almost 36,000 miles on it. So 36,000 miles of virtually trouble-free driving. There was only one fault. As you guys know, it was the parking brake fault, and that was probably battery related, but the dealer cleared it free of charge, and no problems since. So, I'm impressed. Now, this car has been through 2 service Bs, which means our next service B is in 2 years, so, you know, that's why I make these kinds of videos, so that way, you know, if you're looking into buying a Benz of any kind, you have good information on how much service costs, you know, what's the price difference between service A and B, are there other services? Yes, there are, but they come at a later time, like service C, D, so on and so forth. And of course, those would be more expensive than service B. But just to let you know, service B is not going to come cheap. It's going to be around $800, so to speak, generally speaking. But I must say, this color looks outstanding. for a GLC. Now, the only road trips this car has been on is to Kentucky and back 2 times, but the thing is, I was not on those road trips. It was just my mom and my dad. Now, hopefully, if I can talk my parents into it, we can take this to another Kentucky road trip this winter on the winter tires that we have for this car, for like a second Christmas or something like that. Now, we are planning on going to Disney World. I'm not really sure we should with the stupid virus stuff going on, but then again, you know, the same argument could be applied to wanting to go to Kentucky, so pick your poison in that case. But anyway, on to the next subject of today's video, and that is between the Lamborghini Urus and the Lamborghini Aventador, which would you guys rather me rent for one day in Beverly Hills next year, and why? I'm kind of leaning towards the Aventador, so I put up a poll on this on my community tab. 70% of the votes went for the Urus, and 30% went for the Aventador. And then the comments section favored the Aventador over the Urus. Now, I've driven the Huracan. I've driven 3 different types of Huracans, all with extreme experience. And I must say, the Huracan is my favorite driving supercar of all time. I've driven the 458 and the 570S. They just don't compare. Now, the 570S, I love the turbo feel, but I just cannot say it's better than a Lamborghini behind the wheel. It is cheaper, so if you're looking for a supercar that's cheaper than a Lamborghini, the 570S is the way to go. And even more so the 570 GT. But anyway, back on the subject of the second topic of today's video, I have not driven an Urus or an Aventador, and I would like to figure out, you know, what it's like to drive an Aventador. Now, a lot of people are like, oh, don't buy an Aventador or don't rent an Aventador because the transmission's clunky. Well, simply because it's a single clutch gearbox. It's basically a manual transmission that is controlled by a computer or a robot, as some people like to say. So you got to treat it like a manual, as in, you know, upshift at the right interval in terms of speed, RPMs, and whatnot, and also shift to neutral whenever you're coming to a stop. And also, one thing people don't know, some people that is that if you have an Aventador, you can park it in first gear, much like you do with a manual transmission. And then when you start the car, unlike a manual transmission, it goes back into neutral. Because if you park it in neutral, you get a big red N on the screen, and you also get a chime letting you know the car is not parked in gear, even if you have the parking brake on. So, best practice, when you park an Aventador, stop, put the parking brake on, put it back into first gear, and turn the car off. So, I would already know how to drive an Aventador based on saying that. Now, renting an Aventador is not going to be cheap. Neither is an Urus, but the Urus would be cheaper to rent than the Aventador. The Urus would also be more practical. And then there are also some horsepower differences. So 700 versus 641. They're both powerful than the Huracan, but I'd still say the Huracan is miles better to drive than either of the other 2 Lamborghinis. But yeah, this is why I want your guys' opinions on which Lambo I should rent in Beverly Hills next year to make videos with. So, if you enjoyed this update, make sure to smash the thumbs up in the face, subscribe if you're new, turn on post notifications, do what you guys do best. Peace out, don't just have a good day, have an awesome day.